Well, hello, Pablo. This is Andreas Dorner. I'm the managing director of Re&Up. We are a startup and a scale-up. We have already started to do textile recycling from, mechanical recycling, thermochemical recycling, and we started in 2023. And today we have 80,000 tons. So we are really we are talking about really scale recycling technology. And about your question, what needs to be done? So being now 2 years in the market, talking to brands, retailers, authorities, public affairs, and everything, we can say there are multiple things on the circular topic which are important. First of all, of course, you need to have a quality. You need to have output quality. We have cotton and polyester, textile to textile, next gen, which are, of course, feasible to the market. So their quality is good. It works very well. They need to integrate it. Next, you need, of course, a value chain partner. So you need spinners, weavers, knitters, garment makers. Most important, of course, brands, retailers who have a demand, who like to go there because they made internal targets or they want to follow the legislation. So this all needs to be done. And in this ecosystem, of course, very important are also collection systems, sorting systems, and of course, legislation framework. If the European Union goes further in the ESPR and EPR, of course, this is very, very important because under ESPR, there is a recommendation on the eco-design to go for minimum of content and minimum of, let's say, we propose 15% or 20% by 2030 will create a huge demand and pull in the whole value chain. So addressing consumers, brands, retail, and the value chain. So all in all, in a nutshell, the ecosystem is an interdependency of production, feedstock, consumer, brands, and of course, we believed very much scale. So if you have a startup like a laboratory, I think a lot of brands are suffering because they need consistent supply. By consistent supply, multiple collections. And we have seen times where capsules collections were done with, a few hoodies, a few t-shirts, something. That's nice for the beginning. But today, we believe very much it's time to act, it's time at scale. So it's very, very, very important that we are really bringing a solution to the market, which is feasible for a bigger program and shows also to the legislation maker, it's working, is at scale, we can go further. So in a nutshell, I have to say, this is the journey. And from my background now being managing director in Re&Up Technologies, now 2.5 years. Before I had a long history in the fiber industry, working with a well-known Austrian man-made cellulosic fiber producer. We started there with recycling, but of course it was the first thing. Today, the world has changed. And I think also important when we talk about the whole infrastructure, of course, I think very important is also to tackle the topic of commercialization. So we believe the time of big green premiums is over. It needs to be feasible for brands, retailer to adopt to textile fibers, to have, let's say, very, very, let's say, similar pricing they can read the consumers. Saying that, of course, we have two things. In the cotton side, for us, it's more easy to really go to the cost neutral, topic. In polyester, it's different because polyester is one of the highest industrialized fibers. In polyester, you really see that the economy of scale with these huge producers in Asia, you cannot compete. But there is there's virgin polyester, there's bottled polyester, and textile to textile recycled polyester. And we see very much by scaling up more textile to textile recycled polyester, as Re&Up is doing, we see much more of let's say, getting into a way where the high green premiums are not necessary. It's just a feasible way to go further. Well, thank you very much for the question. I think sustainability, we had a very interesting journey in the past years. I think about speed, there was a high progress in sustainability, observing now the last 10, 15 years, where sustainability become very, very important for brands, for everybody in the value chain, scaling up. We see since the Ukraine war and, especially geopolitical irritations, we see that brands, retailers have other priorities. Now in the moment, of course, economy is very important. And so we see that sustainability has reached a certain level. They will not go back. But we need to be clear, it has to fit also to an economic market, so economically and ecologically. So if the sustainability targets are set, the strategies are done, they're executed. Now, of course, it needs to be implemented. And what I said before, the implementation needs also partnerships, collaborations, how to integrate textile to textile recycling or sustainability targets in a whole strategy. We cannot see it just alone. It needs to be embedded in an ecosystem of economic value, consumers. To answer again your question about slow or fast, I would say it's not slow. It takes time. Like every innovation, this is a big innovation. It is a transformation. It takes a time. If you are small, if it was, let's say, a small niche, it can be very fast. But then you reach only a small group of people. Today, we think about reaching a big group of population to really convince or explain to a next generation, like Generation Z, Generation Alpha, other generations. You want to explain what you do, and I think that takes time. Saying that, also we observe that sustainability becoming so big that there are so many labels, so many things. We see also that consumers are a little bit confused what is now the right and not to do. I think therefore I come back on the legislation framework. It is clear legislation, what is now sustainability, and we really, really appreciate that the green claims, that you need to have a third-party verification. You cannot just say, oh, it's a sustainable product. What is a sustainable product? Nobody knows anymore because, suddenly everything is sustainable, but which is not. And it's very, very important to separate the good from the Me Too's, let's say from the originals who are really doing it, and the copies. And I think in this way, as every translation I said, transformation of a society takes time. And it's very, very important that real companies with real products, with third-party verification, with third-party certification, everything needs to be adopted. This takes time. And also we need to understand today's market. You cannot change quickly everything. I mean, it takes a value chain, it takes partnerships, it takes a product development. I would say, I think we're in a very good area. We are now in one of the best time in the best region in textile. As Europe took textile again on a high level priority on the transformation, on the changing, making the textile industry more sustainable, looking for especially recycling. Secondly, that this region is really going forward, but other regions, look at America's pulling back. Europe is taking this very seriously, and I think there has a very, very important role on the global economy because all sourcing areas should then adopt to the EU legislation. So I think we're on a great journey. It could, everything could go faster, but I think it's good that it goes in the right way. And it's more important to have progress than to be slow or fast. The most important is to keep the progress. Thank you very much for this question. Our belief and goal is how we contribute by just like really setting up a textile to textile company like Re&Up. We went from 0 to scale to 80,000 tons. We contribute. We are focusing on post-consumer waste of Europe, meaning cotton, polyelastane. We can separate. We focus on the cotton side in one line. We remove polyester, we remove the color, we have white cotton to sell. On the other line, we have a polyester for polyester rich. The same, we remove the elastane, we remove the color and offer polyester chips. By that, we are addressing 60%, sorry, the 80 is too much, but out of the 100% textile waste in Europe, 60% is cotton and polyester. Majority polyester, okay, cotton is there. But by that, also addressing on post-consumer waste, we, I think, are a very, very important contribution to the recycling solution in the European area. And we talk here about the regional Europe. So of course, our production is in Turkey in two sides. This is not Europe, but we need to think about the European region. So this includes also North Africa, Maghreb, the Maghreb states, Morocco, Egypt, Turkey, because in the end, we are a huge ecosystem, and our contribution is to be a one-stop shop solution provider. Why one? We can take all the waste, post-consumer waste, into our facility, also post-industrial. We have an integrated sorting system. We have then the production. So in that, we are fully integrated company, getting everything unsorted, selecting the right thing to recycle, having a recycling, and offering to the market a fiber. So we are not a waste company, and we are not a sorting company. We are a really very important contribution to the textile recycling ecosystem by offering good quality polyester chips or staple fiber or filament with partners, and cotton fiber, which could be then again activated into weaving, spinning, and knitting. Thank you very much. About the business model, I think it's very, very easy. I think very important is to scale. So we did start with a lab. We of course, we made first some trials on the lab, but you need, of course, to be at scale. And therefore, the business model and business structure becomes better. If you get the waste from Europe, which is a raw material, not sending to Ghana, Atacama, or any desert or something in the world, by having this as a raw material, we are working here also on a long-term contract to get also here economy of scale together, converting then in a big line. As I said, the line is quite big with 50,000 tons cotton, 30,000 ton output of polyester. There, the economy of scale is very feasible to offer to the market very, very price attractive raw materials, and that's the business model. So be as vertical as possible, integrated. Be a solution provider, not to be specific, like I need 100% of this or 100% of that. Look at the reality, and this is polycotton blended with elastan majority in color. So find a solution for the decolorization. This is our own technology. We have patents on that. We have also separation technology developed by ourselves. So this is the huge, huge contribution that the post-consumer textile waste in Europe can be recycled. Well, about the pricing, I think it's a good question, how to integrate that. It's a very important way of kind of eco-modulation where the European Union already finds solution. So as I said, in polyester, there is virgin polyester. The most optimized fiber production in the world is virgin polyester. By that, it's the cheapest way. Then you have bottle polyester and textile to textile. There is a little bit of an upcharge, but as nobody does 100%, you have a 30%, 40%. So the price delta is not as big. While different to cotton, we are very close to cost neutrality. We keep always the benchmark of price with the cotton A, and here we are very, very close. So there is not a big headache on that. But saying that, we need just to look at the products. We need to talk about a holistic way. And on holistic, we see that the European Union is working on the ESPR and EPR, meaning a large brand who is using normal, let's say, virgin materials need to pay EPR fees. As we understand eco-modulation today under ESPR is, if they can show they have a minimum, let's say 50% of recycled material, they have a kind of a benefit. So by that, even the product is slightly a little bit higher, or let's say has a small premium, might be, because every innovation in the world in fibers always gets a premium. Even the fiber is cost neutral. The spinner, the knitter, the weaver, they all want to get something. So this is out of our control. But saying that, even there is a kind of an increase with eco-modulation, the brands can really, really save a lot of money, because if it's a recycled content, it's excluded on the EPR as the text looks like. So it's an economic benefit for them also to be already within the framework. Well, thank you very much. I think it's a very interconnected answer. So the next gen movement, which is now going on, of course, needs different ways. The first of all, it needs, of course, a bigger access and clear access to the raw material, meaning the waste. The systems in Europe are just installed now. I think that should be very, very important. And it needs to have more and more vertically integrated companies, because if you have too many steps in between, the prices go up for the raw material. If the prices go up for raw material, the fiber go up, then it's not working. So it needs here a kind of a lean system that also waste shipments can be done. We appreciate very much the European Union declaration also of the unsold goods, because it's really crazy to send them to landfill and to incineration. But on the way, I would say, so it's the raw material. It's of course legislation. The legislation framework is a big enabler. It's a big supporter. We shouldn't depend on that, but it's a very, very big enabler, especially moving larger brands to this direction. And on the textile to textile side, I think it's very important to have as close as possible to the real, to be too close to the market. For us, it's very clear that our market is Europe, so be close to the market to get the raw materials to close to the origin, where the raw material is coming from. That's Europe. And find as lean as possible solutions with integration and partnerships to get the raw materials to the production, have a large scale that even production costs are still, not hurting the product, and then show to the market in next gen feasible ecosystems, feasible products, which can easily integrated in the existing product line to really, really scale further the next gen development. Well, that's a wonderful question. A very, very, let's say, moonshot question. The whole textile waste in the world is 130 million tons. In the moment, we see around activities and companies scaling up until 2030 or 2035 for just a minor part. I think it's possible in different levels. If we, first of all, we have the overproduction is a big topic. I mean, the overproduction is something which hurts us. So if we have less just produced waste, just produced because it's waste, I think we should start there. And then building up now from Europe, ecosystems, as you said, getting the waste collected, getting the waste together, getting recycled. I think in the long run, it should be the aim, like we have today on plastic bottles or paper or glass, to increase the amount of recycled tremendously. As we know, textile is the second largest polluting industry in the world. We need to come out of that by having solutions for refuse to buy, recycle, reuse, and recovering things. I think also reuse is something which is very important. We see this now with exchanges. Also the repair. I think repair is a very important contribution. If products in a better way, better quality, they should be repaired instead of thrown away. And consumers need to find a way and choice. Is this something they can donate? They can bring it there. Because also what we didn't touch so far is very important, also the social enterprises in Europe. They depend on donation. And still, this is a very, very important pillar of the European textile recycling community, that the really good quality goes to them. Because it would be a pity if a product which has a good quality gets recycled. So we need to do that and say, this is resellable, this is reusable, and then the rest goes for recycle. And it will be a long journey, and it needs, of course, also here very important then expansion plans in Asia, because the majority of the products are produced in Asia, and the biggest consumer markets are in Asia. So I think we can start here, just Europe, building up innovation, technology, green, new green companies, recycling, really a business case where a lot of companies also can add and contribute and innovate. And then we should also be concerned about how to transfer this in other regions, because the globe, as we know, is a huge, and Europe is just a small part. But nevertheless, let's start in Europe and expand to the rest of the world. Well, I think that's a good question. I think Spain is here also very advanced. As a European, and I think we need to take care that the social enterprises depend on this raw material, because that's the only way they can make money. So they need a kind of a portion to resell. And I think I was visiting, especially in Spain, multiple companies in this area, and I think they're doing a great job because they employ people who have no other chance to work. And we need to take also social responsibility that, to integrate again new people into a workforce, they need a training. And this is for a lot of people. We talk here also about refugees and immigrants or other people, which are not easy to integrate. I think they should have a part. I cannot explain how many percentage, but social enterprises is a cornerstone. They have also a very important social structure, I think that's important. And there is enough waste available for the rest. So if we say 10%, 15% is going to social enterprises, I don't know, even there is enough for the others. They're the professional sorters and the professional collectors. They are more efficient. They can use it in their own stores. But I think eliminating the social structure will harm a lot of, the social and the collaboration contract we have in Europe for each other. So I would say, to be numbers again, out of the 100% waste of Europe, only 10% are collected. So in here, the 10%, I would say, these are the social enterprise and others. But we need to talk about the 90. The 90%, there's enough for companies and on so on. So the social enterprises have their way of resellable. Other companies can go into this way of resellable, no problem. But still, let's talk about the 90% and not competing about the 10%. Who is taking that? Is our philosophy, as we are also, getting a lot of waste. I think we need to be in Europe in a more holistic way, focus on the 90%, get here the best out of that. And, our technology is built on the low quality, the recycled quality. So we are not in the game of the resellable. And I think that's also our noble way and saying, let's use the product who are not used anymore. This is our focus. If we get parts of resellable, we have partners where we have in Europe somebody who we know they have some shops on that, but this is not the focus we are working on. We need to, as recyclers, they should work on the low quality, on the not so easy to do working quality, to really, really work on this technology and not compete with the social enterprises. Well, Pablo, the following. As I said, we are 2.5 years on the start. We try to work with all major brands, working with them, which is not publicly available. And it starts always with the same, building up relationship with the reputation we bring to the market. We have in our company a few fiber people with long experience, like I and my friend Özgür. We bring in this, so we have this. Then, of course, it's a normal technical thing. You need to have a good output. You need to have the fibers. You need to have third-party verification. You need to have certifications. You need to have a very strong sustainability team, which is also third-party verified. With that, the brands need to test. So all of them, they test fibers, yarn, quality. And after the technical approval, it goes further. So building up takes time, needs, of course, some know-how, but very, very important third-party verification, really international standards, which are required today, and to integrate that. And of course, a logic how with a textile background. In our group, as we are part of the Sanko ISKO group in Turkey, there's so much tradition. This company, the group is working since 120 years in textiles. So there's a huge knowledge of knitting, weaving, and spinning, even though we work with our own spinners and weaving, but also we send fibers to multiple spinners around the world. And here you need technical support, technical expertise. So I think it's a multiple way. It's not just only the fiber. You need to have really the third-party verification part, which gives them also the credibility and trust, because then they compare apples with apples. If it's a third-party certification, they can compare everything. And this is the way today also that the brands are very, very, very conscious and very clear what to do, how to do, what they can do, how they can trust, and so on. Pablo, one of the best questions. Thank you very much. First of all, collaboration is key in recycling. Number one, collaboration is key. I'm one of the thought lead of T2T Alliance. Why? I met policymakers, and I saw in Brussels, if we talk this way and Re&Up, and another talking this way, another that way, they get completely confused. Policymakers are knowledgeable people, but they're not deep into fibers. So I thought and went around to other fiber producers and say, what if just we create an alliance? And funny enough, there were other people thinking the same. You know, it was not just only me. They said, oh, that's a good idea. We also have this problem. So we created this T2T Alliance, Textile to Textile Alliance, to have for policymakers one voice about the fiber industry. You know, I mean, they get, I don't know, every second or third or fourth week a call. Oh, there's a startup here, a university, and so on. They get completely confused. But now with the ESPR and EPR, they need to have a clear way of talking with the textile industry. And raw materials are very important. Why? On the environmental impact of a garment brought to the market, around 60 to 63% of the environmental impact is coming from the raw material, from the fiber. So I think that's very, very important. Why an alliance is important, to have one voice, to align messages. We have different people there. You know, as you said, we have Renocell on the pipe size. We have polyester. We have Circ. We have Syre. We have others there. We have polyamide. But in the end, we should have a kind of an aligned message to policymakers about the recycling content, about, you know, some messaging. And therefore, I think it's important. Coming back to the beginning, collaboration and partnership is very, very, very important in the textile to textile infrastructure ecosystem. Well, if I find fatigue, I don't think so, because there is so much energy and inspiration. There is something which we can observe a little bit. There are a lot of events coming up recently or during the year with this very similar question mark, you know, with a very similar one. But I think, you know, as also messaging is important, the redundancy in messaging is important. I think there are different locations, different events, and different things where the paraphrasing of recycling, the paraphrasing of sustainability importance is there. As we can see today, still a lot of consumers didn't change. So I think to put the sustainability on number one is very, very important, because consumers need to find it. Consumers who are interested need to find the product. They need orientation. They want to do a kind of a right purchasing criteria. And I think I would not say fatigue. It's more new companies are coming up now with AI and new digital technologies. There are even more fun tools to get it there, because to change the world in a better way, we need always to think in a picture of a marathon, not a sprint. We are in a marathon. It's a long way to go. It's not done in 1 year, not just claiming, oh, very loud. No. It's long. Consumers need to they need to find it interesting. The wording, the messaging should be very clear. It should be third-party verified, so they know, well, it's trusted. And then, of course, it needs also to, you know, you buy a very environmental sustainable product, and it should also perform to then come again back. And I think we see multiple brands who've done a great narrative and wording, who were successful. There are also companies, they're not a little bit too much greenwashing, they were not successful. So I think it's very important to go with the right companies who have really a long-term vision, build everything on really certified, based, long-term strategic process, not too short-term, and being very authentic, real, and honest. Well, in one sentence, it's perhaps more clear. Legislations are coming, and ESPR and EPR will force companies to pay high taxes on. So by going into more environmental product, they will save long-term money. Secondly, very important is also people. You attract more people if you're in a circularity environment, sustainability. active, because the next generation who is coming now in the workforce, they're more purpose driven, and by that it's very, very important. And of course, third, you do something good for the world. You want to wake up in a world where you say, I made a contribution to make the world a better place. So I think these are the three elements. So it's a financial, it's a messaging, it's of course attracting new people, talents, and also making an impact for yourself, for your time being an executive, to really, really move the world to a better place for you, for the people, for the environment, and for the health of a lot of people.